Hello, everybody. Once again, Nate Swick and Greg Neise here from the ABA. We are your What's This Bird admins. We help maintain this group, and we are going to sit here and take your bird ID questions live. Greg, how's your week been?
Hello. uh, it's been okay. It's been very, very wet.
It's been here too.
We have the Midwest, the Great Lakes. I mean, I'm sure you've seen what happened in Michigan.
Yeah.
But I mean, the rivers around Chicago are all flooded. The river walk downtown Chicago is underwater, living up to its name. And the Sears Tower, now called the Willis Tower, but nobody from Chicago calls it that.
I don't think any people out of Chicago call it that.
Yeah, it flooded and lost electricity, so it's been dark for the last few days. So yeah, in a word, it's been very wet, and I think that goes all the way across to the eastern seaboard.
It's been wet down here too. The last 2 days have been nasty and cold and rainy, and not a lot of bird activity. Not that I've been out in it to even look. And yeah, today's a really nice day. This first day in like 3 or 4 that we've had really good days. But it has been really good for birding, for water birding. I had some friends here in my county. Who found an Arctic tern, and we're like 250 miles inland at one of the local reservoirs that got knocked down by the nasty storm, and first county record, which was pretty cool. I didn't get out to go see it, unfortunately, but yeah.
The east winds. These are normally in spring, at least from my anecdotal observations. When we get east wind, it's on the backside of a storm system that moves through, and so you get a big push of birds from the south when it comes in from the southwest or the west.
Yeah.
And then for a day or two on the backside of it, you get that northeast wind that kind of shuts everything down for a day or two, and then it moves on, right. And then rinse repeat. Mm-hmm. This year there's been this huge cyclonic system out in the Atlantic and the east that's just sitting there. And these east winds are just these powerful northeast winds have been sitting on us for days and days and days. But last night it broke. Birds moved in again. And Steve Huggins, who's watching, had a very good morning today at North Pond. I think he had 21 or 22 species of warblers.
Wow.
Yeah, which is, we're getting late for those kinds of counts. It's like the first wave has moved. Well, actually, the second wave has moved through, and the third wave, which is all flycatchers and some cuckoos and things like that, they're starting to come.
Yeah, we're starting to get black-billed cuckoos in a lot of places down here, which are late migrants, and I expect for me the very very last one is always something like a willow flycatcher or something, which will kind of come through in the very first week of June even. That seems to be when I've seen them in my part of the state, in the Piedmont.
Exactly. I mean, there's some places, and again, hate to bring it up again, but Montrose Point is closed. But in other years, the last week of May, the first week of June is a spectacular time to study flycatchers, because you will get all of the expected species in big numbers, all singing, and often down low, where you can really spend some time with them. I haven't seen much in the way. Well, actually, that's not true. There was a big cyclonic system out west.
Yeah, I was going to say there was that one in the North Pacific that the Birdcast folks, if you're not following Birdcast, it's birdcast.info. It is a product of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. They essentially take all the Doppler radar and all the wind maps, and they connect them with the eBird data that we have, like knowing when and where birds are supposed to arrive, and they're able to make some actually pretty impressive predictions about what specific species are likely to be moving at a given time. And they were taking a look at this huge big cyclone that was in the North Pacific and predicting that it would potentially knock down some of those trans-Pacific migrant shorebirds, in particular bristle-thighed curlew, which is sort of a mythic bird in the lower 48.
Which happened.
Which totally happened.
And
so they were like,
hey,
there was
There was one in California, and then I think one in British Columbia. I
Was there
forget
one
what
in
the
British
other one
Columbia
was,
too?
but there
I
were.
hadn't heard that yet.
Yeah, there were two of them.
Yeah, it was crazy. They're like, this weather system looks exactly like one in 1998 that pushed bristle-flied curlews to the west coast of the United States and southwest Canada. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened again, which is pretty phenomenal predictive power by the birdcast wizards. We do have a few questions.
So,
let's go before we get to our presentation where we start going through some of the birds that have been posted to the What's This Bird group. I do have some questions. One, Greg, how do I grow a beard like you?
I'm not. You can't.
You can't. You can't.
You can't. You could try, but you can't.
What are the best ways for beginners to ID birds? So when you're talking to a novice birder, what are you focusing? What do you want them to focus on? That's from at JanksMark on Periscope /Twitter.
Well, if you start with the very, very, very basics, it's my, how studious. That's a new look for you.
Welcome to 40.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got glasses like stashed all over the house. But learn the different families and groups and what they look like. So, learn the difference between a goose and a cormorant. Mm-hmm. And and those very, very basic groups, and then pay attention to size and shape. Become familiar with the birds around you, like robins, and learn what a robin looks like when it's 20 feet away from you in your backyard, but also learn what a robin looks like when it's 100 feet away at the top of a tree down the block. Mm-hmm. And once you become familiar with what a robin looks like, then when a hermit thrush or something shows up, it's not a robin. Yeah. And so learning the common birds around you and learning them well is always the best place to start.
Yeah, and I also go ahead.
And study field guides.
Yeah,
get like a Sibley Guide to Birds, which is my favorite field guide, and keep it next to your bed. And before you go to sleep, just leaf through it and say, you know what, tonight I'm going to read these 10 pages, study these 10 pages of flycatchers, and just do that every night.
You know what to look for when you're in the field. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Greg said about knowing your common birds, I do think that sometimes if you focus too much on field guides, you're kind of you focus too much on things like field marks, like very specific marks on the bird. And I think, those are, that's the classic field guide way to identify birds, but I think it's sometimes useful to go backwards and have that be one of the last things you consider. So when you're learning about how to identify birds, focus on things like how the bird is moving, where the bird is, the shape and structure of the bird, which is getting to Greg's point about knowing your common birds. These are all like things that do not change as much as field marks. Field marks can change a lot. Sometimes they can be extremely prominent. Sometimes they can be you don't see them very well based on how the bird is sitting and how you're seeing it, or the light. That should be one of the later things that you think about when you're trying to identify birds. Try and focus on things that don't change as much. Time of year, behavior, shape of the bird, things like that. That's what I would definitely encourage people to think more about.
Yeah, and Tom Lally in the Chicago or in the Illinois group, which is we've got a watch party in the Illinois group on Facebook as
Illinois.
Well. And he says, leave the camera at home. And there's a lot of truth to that, because when you leave the camera at home and just use binoculars to study the birds, you are engaging different parts of your brain and you're looking at the birds very differently.
Yes.
And so there is a lot of truth to that. Having said that,
we're going to look at pictures today.
Well, that's the group that we are in here. The main group here is a group of identifying bird pictures, and it's an interesting phenomenon that we at the ABA have been following for years. I think I've written 3 or 4 essays about it, and I know you have, and you've done podcasts about it. But there is this trend that is no longer a trend. I think it's now a full blown thing. In the birding involves going out and taking pictures of birds you see, and then figuring out what they are later when you get home and look at the pictures, or chimp the back, and look at the back. And there's a lot of discussion. I mean, we could do a whole hour about that. But it's a thing, and there's a lot of people who do it. Yeah. And that's kind of the reason why we started What's This Bird?
Yeah, it's real funny too, because we are trying to encourage people to learn common birds, learn things like shape and behavior, and be conscious about how light can affect color. Well, when you're identifying birds with photos, like you are looking at a snapshot, a brief point in time that is sometimes can fool you as to what the bird might actually be. And actually, we have some photos that we're going to share here in a little bit that show that, including one video that Greg sent along to me. It's when you're looking at photos, sometimes you are looking for those extremely subtle field marks that can tell you what a bird is, because some of the other things that you would be more inclined to use in the field are not available to you. So it's different.
And to repeat something that we say every single week when we do these, identifying a single image of a bird is usually more difficult than identifying the bird in the field.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. We do have some questions from Jane Ogilvie, who asks about the term immature used in bird ID, where versus things like first summer, juvenile, first year, things like that. Sometimes those terms can be used interchangeably, and sometimes they can be extremely confusing. And we will try to explain that now. So when people use the term, the term immature or subadult, in my view, is an extremely broad term to refer to any bird that is not an adult, right? Subadult, immature, not a mature bird, subadult. And for some species, it can take several years to achieve that adult plumage. For instance, a good example of that is bald eagle, which can be 5 to 7 years to get to its classic whitehead, whitetail, brown body look, and it goes through several different looks between that. Or it can be something like a songbird, a towhee or whatever, that has a very classic kind of subadult, immature look that they only hold for the first few months of their life before their first molt in the fall, when they look more or less like an adult bird after that point. So subadult and immature are the terms I like to use for young birds, because they are so broad, and then you don't have to start thinking about things in terms of first year, second year, third year, whatever, or juvenile, which can be sort of complicated terms. But juvenile is something very specific. You want to explain that, Greg?
And well, juvenile is the first set of feathers that a bird has as it's fledging.
Yes.
So as the bird is for the first time leaving the nest, those juvenile feathers are the very first ones after the down feathers that it has when it's in the nest, that it grows to cover the down. And in a lot of birds, especially passerines, the juvenile feathers are very different from the immature feathers.
Yes.
And they're in a lot of cases, especially warblers and sparrows. Most birders don't see warblers in juvenile plumage. And we did, I think Canada. It was they're up in Canada, and they're up in the boreal forest, and there's the ratio of people to trees is huge
in favor of the trees.
In the favor of the trees. Yeah. And then when you make whittle that down to birders, it's probably like one birder for every million square miles up there. But occasionally they will hang on to their juvenile plumage longer than normal and really confuse people. And yellow-rumped warblers are notorious for this.
Yeah.
Yellow-rumped warblers will actually hang on to that juvenile plumage all the way down through winter, and then in spring, like in April and May, show up in juvenile plumage, or something very close to it, and confuse the hell out of people.
Yeah, juvenile plumage is frequently extremely streaky. Because it's more camouflaged. Not as clean as the adult birds. But juvenile, as Greg said, is that really specific first set of full feathers that a bird has. And typically the juvenile feathers are replaced in their first molt, which in a lot of birds, not all birds, will be that fall. So they really only have that juvenile plumage for weeks at most. And then they will turn into, they'll be more or less indistinguishable from adult birds, or they'll have, an immature first year plumage. But all of that is under the subadult, immature umbrella. And then, so I hope that explains it a little bit. That's the main reason why when I'm talking about birds that are not adults, I like to use subadult or immature, because it's broader, right? And a lot of people can get very confused when you start talking about things like first year, second year, whatever. I don't know if that's super useful in terms of like actually birding, but people who are banding birds and have them in the hands and actually get an up close look at some of the feathers can, look at things like wear and be able to make those distinctions. I don't know that it's super useful for regular birders to do. I tend not to, but if you want to, that's definitely a route you can go down if that's where you want to take your birding. All right. All right.
So what do we got here?
We've answered the questions. You have some more questions?
Some questions and comments here. Tim Callback says, leave the field guide at home as well as the camera. And that's a good thing. Or just carry it with you and resist using it. Just try to get what you can without leafing through the book, and spend as much time on the bird. And people have a tendency to get in the binoculars and then want to immediately pick up the book and start leafing through, and then they realize they didn't get enough information, and they're lost in the book. And the bird's gone. So
I always think of field guides, especially really big ones like Sibley, as home books or car books. Like I'll throw it in the car when I'm going birding just to like have it in case I come across something that's really unusual or I need a reference. And a lot of time for that, I'll use the app. So I have the app on my phone. So if I need a reference for a specific bird, I can pull up the app. The field guide I really like to leaf through when I'm at home, and I have kind of the opportunity to kind of consider the entire plate as a whole, compare species that are sort of difficult on it. That's much more difficult to do in the app form. I throw the field guide in the car or leave it at home, and use it that way.
Yeah, and Steve Huggins brings up a good point too. He says, learn how to accept that to begin with, you can't always identify every bird you see. You got to let some go.
You got to let some go.
And just be cool with it.
Yep. You got to let them go. And if they return, they were meant to be, I guess. I don't know.
All right, so what do we got?
Frank Lehman has one question here. Why do some birds in breeding plumage like Scarlet, Tanager, or Blackburnian Warbler seem to glow their colors so brightly you can't do it justice in photos? I'd say that's a function of the light. And I think that those birds are extremely conscious of how they look in any given light, which is hard to pick up on a camera. Yes, birds have mastered so that their feathers, the colors that we see are bounced off the feathers, and a lot of the time it's not actual pigment, it's feather structure that rejumbles the light waves. So like all the iridescent colors, like the blues and greens or the bright gorgets of hummingbirds, if you see them in if the light isn't hitting them, they're just black. They're kind of a dull grayish black. And then when the light hits them, it's like the light, they glow. Yeah. And birds have evolved the ability to control that, which is awesome. Yeah. When you see hummingbirds and birds of paradise and the way they can control the it's really just phenomenal. Yeah, and they don't do it when you've got a camera in your hand all the time.
Well, exactly.
So we're just doing the best we can on that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to our pictures.
They can see, and of course, birds can see parts of the light spectrum that we can't.
Exactly. Yeah, they can see in the ultraviolet. Yep.
So that Scarlet Tanager doesn't look like that to a female Scarlet Tanager. It may even be brighter and yeah.
All right. So right before we got started, Greg threw this Vireo at me, and I'm gonna let him talk about it.
Yeah, so it's a back of a camera shot, also called a BOC, which is one of the banes of my existence.
Instant 1 star in eBird. If I see a back of the camera shot in eBird, 1 star. I don't care how good it is.
I tried to start a movement to ban back of the camera shots on the internet, but it went down in flames. People really like them. But anyway, so this is a back of the camera shot. And so what it is, it's a picture taken with your phone of the back, the LCD screen on the back of a camera. And those screens do not, they don't show the colors and contrast and everything that the actual image has. It's more of just a preview to see, whether you're in focus and how you're cropped. And anyways, so this picture of this Vireo is confusing because at first blush, it looks like a blue-headed Vireo. But, and we're used to with photographs having, especially in spring, there's so much greens and yellows being reflected on the white breasts and bellies and so on of birds that even a bird with a clean white belly like a Tennessee warbler can look yellow.
Yeah, really.
So this bird was up for a while, and there was a discussion about whether it's a blue-headed or a yellow-throated. Because if you look really closely, it seems like from the bill down to about the mid-breast, there's something going on there. But is that just light hitting it, and then the belly is in shadow? It's really hard to tell. So now if you go to the next image, that's the actual picture.
Yeah, it's a little more obvious.
That Linda posted later on, and that is obviously a yellow-throated vireo. So that is an example of what we were talking about earlier, where a single image like that can be very confusing, but more so if it's a back of the camera image.
Yes. So I urge you all to give back of the camera shots 1 star on eBird, please.
Yes. And I know I've opened myself up to a new world of pain by talking about back of camera pictures.
Yeah. I don't have any other back of camera shots for you,
I'll take it.
Greg. They're all normal. Oh, Jenny says she's never seen a BOC on eBird. You're not looking hard enough, Jenny. You're not looking hard enough. I see them all the time. But I do spend a lot of time on eBird for the Rare Bird Alert thing that I do every week for the ABA website. And eBird is where I get a lot of the photos that I link to, and there's a lot of BOCs on there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the only thing there. All right, so what do we got here? I got another one. I got another warbler for you. And I think this is a warbler from, so I know Maria. She lives here in North Carolina, so I know that this is a Piedmont, North Carolina bird that was taken probably not that long ago. And here's another incident of is that yellow real or is it not?
Is it a floor wax or is it a dessert topping?
Yeah.
Since we know what species this bird is, we know that yellow is not real. And so is this an image that's just had the yellows juiced because that's the way the camera interpreted it? Different cameras have, so just to put it in really raw terms, that was a pun you didn't catch.
No.
But anyways.
Put it in JPEG terms.
The less the less you pay for a camera, the lower quality the sensor in the camera. That's like one of the most expensive parts of the camera is the actual sensor that collects the image. And when you spend more money on a camera, one of the things you're getting is a sensor that can record subtle differences in color and shade and tone. And I'm kind of setting up for the next shot. But on this one, we can see a lot of field marks that identify this bird if we just ignore the yellow. So we've got wing bars, we've got that little black malar and the streak through the eye and the supercilium, and just the color. It's just kind of gray. And this is a female blackpoll warbler.
Female blackpoll warbler. A lot of female blackpoll warblers coming through the eastern part of the United States and into Canada these days. They are one of the last birds to migrate, and they're kind of peaking right about now. But yeah.
And one other thing to say about the yellow color too. One other thing to say about the yellow color too is, especially when it's in spring migration, birds feed on pollen a lot. And they just like they will dive into the flowers and get covered in pollen.
Yeah.
And we'll see Tennessee warblers with orange faces that also throw people off.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And here's that composite photo you sent me earlier, Greg. I'm going to throw that one up there because we were talking about how different looks. You don't always get the shade and intensity of the color depending on what you are seeing and how you are seeing it. And here we have two ostensibly yellow warblers. Looks like we got was it Wilson? Is that a Wilson's warbler or is that a yellow warbler?
No, it's a yellow
warbler. All right. Looks like it's even got a cap there, and it threw me off. But yeah, yellow warbler.
Wilson's, but the tail pattern. Wilson's doesn't have any white in the tail.
You're right.
Well,
is there white in the tail?
It's actually,
I can't
it's
really
not.
see
It's
much
yellow.
White in the tail.
It's
yeah.
yellow.
Yeah.
It's not white. It's yellow. And you're right, because when it's backlit like that and everything around it is green, you can't tell. Is that white? Is that yellow? And I pulled that image into Photoshop and adjusted it a bit to see if there was white. But the tail pattern, identifies this as a yellow warbler, and of course the black bill and the open face. But the bird that it was being confused with is the prothonotary warbler, female prothonotary warbler, which is on the right there. And you'll notice right away the different shape. It's just the bird's got a different shape. It's got a bigger bill. It's got a shorter, wider tail. Yeah. And you'll notice the tail pattern is quite different.
But that bill is huge.
Yeah.
I always noticed that in prothonotary warblers, but when you see it in that sort of situation, it is much more obvious.
Kingfisher warbler.
Yeah, totally. All right, so we do have a question. Nancy Berger asks, can't tell the difference between a house finch and a purple martin. I'm going to guess that she means purple finch.
Purple finch.
There. Yeah, that's one of the classic bird ID conundrums, house finch, purple finch. But when I'm looking at those birds, well, most of the birds around where I live are house finches. Even in the winter, we don't have a ton of purple finches around. But the first thing that stands out to me is that when we were talking about house finch versus purple finch, is that purple finch, like the pattern on the face is much more well-defined. You can see that kind of mask immediately around the eyes. And the color is a little bit different. Like a purple finch is red, but it's a much more purpley, kind of maroony, not maroony.
It's kind of raspberry.
Raspberry, yeah. That's a good way. And house finch is more kind of straight ahead, kind of dark, kind of grayish red. And of course, the purple finch, the wash, the kind of raspberry wash, goes all the way down the sides of the bird, underneath the bill, underneath the wing, and on a house finch.
And on the wing.
On the wing, yeah.
And on the wing panel, and that's if you've got a male on your feeder, look at the wing panel, and if it's brown and white, so it's just a brown wing panel with whitish, grayish white wing bars, it's a house finch.
Yeah.
And if it shows any raspberry or reddish color, it's probably a purple finch.
Yeah.
They're different. They're really different when you see them side by side. I mean, purple finch is kind of a stocky, heavy bird. It's got a big bill. The female is very strongly patterned, especially the head.
The female is very strongly. In fact, a female purple finch, it seems to me like, based on our experience on What's This Bird, people tend to mistake female rose-breasted grosbeaks for purple finches more than female house finches, because that's real striking pattern on the head.
And if you look at pictures of male purple finches in the Macaulay Library, the eBird photo library, you'll notice that the males look just like the females, just dipped in raspberry juice.
Yeah,
so that pattern. Pattern is still there for the most part.
We have a question from what is it? What am I looking at? The Twitter thing. I can't believe my brain completely shut off there.
Periscope.
That's it. At Sisu Softs asks, can you guys record and archive these? Yes, we can, and we do. Check out the ABA's YouTube channel and all these What's This Birds and all the virtual bird clubs that we've been doing every other week. You can find those on at our YouTube channel. That's where we archive them. Robert Mulville, just back to purple versus house finch. He notes the bill shape is key too. Yeah, that's something I typically point out to people here in North Carolina, where we get a lot of people misidentifying house finches as purple finches. But yeah, it's that curved upper mandible called the culmen, which is the top of the bill on a house finch. It's much more noticeably curved, and it almost makes the house finch bill look a little blunt. Right? Mm-hmm. And whereas when you see a purple finch bill, it's very triangular, more triangular. It's a little bit curved, but it's more triangular. It looks very sharp, where you don't necessarily see that on a house finch. That when you see the bird in profile, that's something that does stand out quite a bit.
And so Matt Igleski chimes in. He just chimes in with the word groan and the care emoji. And I don't know what that's all about, but it must be because he's stuck in Indiana. So hopefully Matt will have a better time of it today.
All right, we'll go back to our birds here, our pictures here. We got a thrush, Greg, and I'm making it easy for you. We've been talking a lot about thrushes when we do this every week because, one, there's a lot of thrushes coming through, or at least there were in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and two, Catharus thrushes, those Hermit Swainson's Veery gray cheek thrushes are consistently an ID issue with people out there, and we try to make those as easy as possible, but this one's pretty straight ahead.
It is. So what is it?
It's a gray cheek thrush. You can see because it has a gray cheek.
Yes, exactly. But one thing that was...
So does Veery. Veery has a gray cheek too. I should have put that weird Veery gray cheek thrush that people were arguing about a few days ago. Maybe I'll go back and try and find that.
Yeah. Well, and this is what I was saying earlier about the camera sensors, and it was my raw pun that made Matt.
Oh yeah, I would groan too.
Yeah,
I didn't even get it because I was responding to someone. I was typing something to someone, so I didn't even catch it.
But this, I don't know what camera this was taken with, but look at how you can really see the differences in the subtle tones and colors on this bird, even after it's been JPEG compressed probably 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
But you can really see the gray on the face, the olive tones on the back, and even pick up a little bit of the russet on the tail, on the shaft of the
little bit,
the central tail feathers. So that's that's key in a lot of birds. Anyways, that's what we were talking about and what I was setting up for.
Yeah, totally.
Earlier.
And one of the interesting things about this, you could see in this image, is that it is in shadow a little bit. So there's probably something above it that is casting shadow on the back, and you can see the way that the shadow affects the colors on the head and the back and on the rump especially.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, birding by photos can be sort of difficult. All right, so I got another warbler for you that no one identified, and I don't think I identified this one. I'm actually having a little trouble with this bird. Greg, you might want to blow it up. I'm gonna make it even bigger here.
I can't see.
I have 2 pictures I'm gonna flip back and forth on and I can't tell if this and this. Here's another image of it.
Are these 2 the same?
That's what I was wondering, right? So this person, and I wish I could go back and check. She submitted that there were, she submitted 3 images, and 2 of them were of this bird that has sort of the streaks on the side here. And then there is this bird that I'm going back to, the first image, that looks like a different bird. Like I would call these 2 completely different warblers. So this is a little bit of some high wire bird identification here. We're going to do it. Live. We're doing it live.
I don't know that I can see this well enough to tell what it is.
So I'm going to tell you what my gut impression was on the first image, which is the one that's showing now.
Yeah.
I would have called this a Nashville Warbler without too much hesitation, because I can see what looks like kind of a gray head. It's got a very well-defined eye ring.
You know what? I couldn't see that before, but I do see the eye ring.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now, this second picture, I'm going to put the other picture up here. I don't know if this is the same bird because look, this is not a Nashville Warbler because it's got wing bars and it's got streaks on the flanks.
yeah, that I don't
know what this one is. Honestly, I don't really see enough of it. Maybe a kitten or a female.
It kind of reminds me of female blackpoll,
yeah.
But this first bird,
Yeah, so
I kind of think it's so perfectly obscured by the leaf in front of it, but it looks like that
yes.
might be a wing bar.
I see what you're looking at. Yeah, right here. Oops. I wish I had an arrow I could do. I need to... Wait, hold on. Right here. Right there.
Yeah.
There's a wing bar, maybe, right there.
Maybe. I mean, I can't. It's just enough out of focus.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to pull that into Photoshop and look at it a little.
We'll save that for next week.
But like we were saying earlier, some of them you just got to let go.
Yeah. And now I understand why no one was trying to identify it. Now look, okay, so big eye ring, wing bar here, Magnolia Warbler. But the tail doesn't look right on the second picture.
I don't. The one that's facing away from us.
Yeah. Enhance.
No,
Blackpoll Warbler. Serena asks if Blackpoll Warbler isn't considered. Look at that. Yeah, and Sarah Hobart notes the yellow feet here. Maybe Blackpoll is correct here. Parula.
Well, the second picture looks like a Blackpoll to me. The first one,
I'd go with it.
Boy, that's really confusing.
Yeah. Anyway, they were all together, so I have to assume that they're the same bird, but I don't know for sure. Tentatively Blackpoll. Tentatively Blackpoll. Enhance.
Okay.
Yellow feet. Okay. All right. So here's an easier one. We haven't done hawks in a while. Let's do a hawk.
No, we haven't.
Here's a young hawk. So we were talking about immature versus juvenile versus subadult versus whatever you want to, first year, second year, whatever. Hawks are kind of great birds for this because they do take several years to achieve their adult plumage. And so we do see birds like this for a while at any time of year. And but there are some things that are pretty obvious on this one. That belly band. Yeah, Brian Tinker says when it comes to birds, always get burst shots. He's absolutely right. Absolutely right. Set that camera to burst and just fire off as many shots as you possibly can. And hopefully you'll get a few. The spray and pray method. That's my favorite way to take photos of birds.
It works. It works. I'll be
45 blurry photos and one good one.
Exactly. I'll be doing an essay about that that includes that very topic for the ABA website in the next few weeks coming up, because I've been playing around with spray and pray quite a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a red-tailed hawk with the belly band.
Yeah, nice young one though. You can even see the here. I'll put the person who photo. I'll make sure MJ Tash gets some attention here. But yeah, you can see the bands on the tail here. So young red-tailed hawks do have banded tails, kind of lightly banded tails, not like a red-shouldered or a broad-winged or anything like that. But they typically have those.
If this were a red-shouldered or a broad-winged, it would have streaking on the chest.
Yeah.
A little more markings on the face.
Yep.
And if it were a broadwing, it wouldn't have those bars on the secondaries that we can see pretty clearly.
Yeah.
So
and someone in the comments and Facebook, and she may have deleted it, noticed a hairier face. But that, That hairier face, that sort of forward-facing eyes, is very common among a lot of raptors. So you will see that sort of field mark sometimes in just about every sort of predatory bird, because they have those forward-facing binocular vision that allows them to accurately gauge depth perception and where their prey is. So sometimes when you see a bird like this that has its face turned a certain way, you can kind of see the facial shield. I mean, they all sort of have that, but harriers, obviously, that's a very classic harrier look.
Yeah.
Because
and in this case, the shadow falling across the bird's head is accentuating
exacerbates it. Yeah, exactly. All right, well, I don't have any more pictures, Greg, unless you've got some more. If anyone has any questions about birds, birding, bird identification, anything related to birds, let us know in the comments here on Facebook. Jenny says she deleted it out of embarrassment. No, Jenny, it's a good observation. It gives us an opportunity to talk a little bit about raptor faces and structure and sort of identification hangups. But yeah, so if you have any questions in there, I do have a few in Periscope that I will read off. So those of you who are in Periscope, please stay tuned for that. I'm going to check Twitter just real quick. I got all my screens here. Nothing on YouTube. All right, so Jordan Chazin asks, advice for rainy day birding? Getting a lot of that. Getting a lot of practice at that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've had some of the best days I've ever had have been in rain where you can bird. I mean, obviously, if it's just absolute downpour, the birds are going to try to seek shelter as best they can, and you should too. But rain, different things happen in the rain. Okay, so when migrating birds hit rain at night, passerines, they drop down. They won't fly through rain. They'll fly through headwinds. They'll fly through all kinds of things, but they won't fly through rain. So the next day can be really good, and if it's still raining, it tends to be colder, the insects are down lower. And especially around water. And what we've been seeing here, people have been getting, and a lot of new birders are like, this is awesome, because Blackburnian warblers are 5 feet off the ground and they're looking directly at them. And I'm like, don't get used to that, because next year it's probably, this is not a once in a lifetime, but definitely it's a rare occurrence to have things like cerulean warbler and these treetop birds down on the ground picking insects off the edges of puddles and stuff. But then shorebirds also during the day, especially in May, if you have south or west winds, shorebirds migrate way up high. You can't see them; they're so high. But if they hit a storm, they will come down. They will drop right down, and they'll find the first field or puddle or whatever they can find. And I've just had some spectacular days where you're just out there and the storms are kind of scudding through and knocking shorebirds out of the sky, and it's just been phenomenal.
Yeah, and one of the things when you have those sort of systems there where it rains for a little while and then it lets up, and then it rains for a little while and lets up, I found that sometimes the birds are obviously not able to forage like they would when it's not raining, when the rain is coming down. So sometimes if you can get out in a situation where it's raining and stopping and raining and stopping, like every time it stops, there's this burst of activity that a lot of times you can kind of follow and be aware of and be on the lookout for, like a second dawn sometimes if there's like a lot of rain. So sometimes those sort of nasty days can be really good ones. I know.
And I'm gonna pull this up while you're talking here.
Oh, okay. Situation that I'm thinking of a time, in Northwest Ohio, at the biggest week. There was one a few years ago where it was just like absolutely nasty, persistent north winds keeping the birds from getting up there. But we'd had some really rainy days. And that's what we tried to do. Like we'd go in the car and we'd wait out the rain or try and find the edge of the rain using our phones to try and follow the Doppler. And go to those places where the rain has just stopped, and then get out and then try and bird no matter where you are. And a lot of times that burst of activity can be really impressive.
So this is in Georgia, where I'm going to show you here, and this is right now. But get one of the app that I like to use is called Radarscope Pro. There's two versions of it. One's free, one's like $20. It's definitely worth the $20. But here's what it looks like, and this is showing Doppler radar over or near Atlanta, I think. But anyways, you can zoom in really
Super
great
precise.
detail,
Yeah,
and see the edge of a storm incoming. And I'm reminded of a big day that we did. I think Adam and a couple of other people that are watching were with us, where storms are coming through in bands, and we were able to sort of figure out where this band was going to go and how long it was going to take, drive up about 45 minutes north to a place where we could get some birds and use that time to wait out the storm as it passed through, and then drive back down to our route without really missing a beat. And we've also done things like adjust our birding route. So if the storms are moving one direction, go across it so that, we move through it faster. But yeah, Radarscope Pro, when you're out birding, can be a real handy tool.
Yeah, that's real cool. Marty Harmon has a question about, do birds often return to the same location to breed? He has a yellow-bellied sapsucker that comes to their feeders the last 4 years. He suspects it is the same bird. It is. I'm pretty confident that's exactly the same bird that's coming back every single year. Yeah, especially birds like sapsuckers that are cavity nesters. Excavating a cavity is a big job, and if they don't have to do it every single year, that's saving them time to potentially even get a second brood out that they might not get otherwise. So if they've got a good spot, they will absolutely come back. I've had the same pair of house finches come and breed underneath my eaves in my front porch for like the last 4 years as well. So yeah, if they've got a spot, they'll use it again and again and again until they can't anymore.
And what's also interesting is that a lot of birds do the same thing on their wintering grounds. Swainson's thrush that goes back to the same little patch of forest in Canada goes right back to the same little patch of forest in Costa Rica and holds a territory there in the winter.
Wood thrush does that as well. Yeah, they put little trackers on the back of them and they figured that out. It's very neat. I have a question from Periscope. Sisu Soft asks, any suggestion on a good monocular? I would say get a binocular.
Yes, I would say don't use a binocular.
Don't use a binocular. Yeah.
Don't. It's too frustrating. It really is.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've been at this about an hour now, so we are probably going to call it quits for this week, but we will be back next Friday at 1 or 1:30, depending on how busy my morning is. Today was a little busier than usual, so we had to push it off. But we still got in. Still had a ton of people. Thank you all so much for joining us and asking us your bird questions. Save them up for next time. And if you're interested in joining the ABA and helping support these sorts of presentations, initiatives, I don't know what this is. You can go to aba.org/join and join the ABA. You can help support these sort of free resources, and you get magazines, discounts to our partners like Princeton University Press and Cornell Lab of Ornithology and things like that. But
absolutely.
Yeah. aba.org/join. But otherwise, thanks, Greg. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll be here next week. We'll see you then.
Good to be with you, Nate. See you guys later.
Bye-bye.